The gray walls of Westlake Correctional Facility loomed over Renee Jackson as she walked across the staff parking lot. The February wind cut through her uniform jacket, making her shiver despite her 7 years in corrections. Her transfer to medium security had been approved last month, closer to home and her 14-year-old son, farther from the memories of minimum security where her ex-husband had also worked before their divorce. Warden Elijah Davis greeted her with military stiffness, handing over her new keycard and electronic fob. Medium security has its own rules, Jackson. No exceptions, no special treatment. These inmates have longer sentences, more time to observe patterns, find weaknesses. His eyes held a warning that made her stand straighter. Your record is solid. Keep it that way. The medium security wing smelled of industrial cleaner and institutional confinement. Officer Diane Michaels, a veteran with 20 years' experience, showed her the routines, cell checks, meal supervision, recreation monitoring. Don't take this wrong, Michaels said quietly, but attractive women need extra vigilance here. They'll test you, watch for cracks in your professionalism. That afternoon, 15 inmates transferred from overcrowded Eastland Correctional. Renee observed the intake process dispassionately until the 12th man stepped forward. Unlike the others who slouched or fidgeted, he stood perfectly straight, his standard-issue jumpsuit somehow looking tailored on his lean frame. Wilson. Darius Wilson, he stated calmly. S24601. The intake officer barely looked up. Fraud and embezzlement. 8 years, 3 served. During afternoon cell checks, Renee passed Wilson's cell. He was arranging books methodically on the metal shelf. When he noticed her, he looked up with dark, intelligent eyes that seemed to assess everything in an instant, acknowledging her with a slight nod before returning to his task. That evening, Renee sat at her Kit Nguyen table surrounded by bills. Child support was late again, and her son had already disappeared into his bedroom with headphones, their new normal since the divorce. Her thoughts drifted to the new inmates, particularly Wilson. Something about him nagged at her, not threatening, but like a puzzle piece that didn't fit the expected pattern. The next day, Renee began her regular rotation. During library period, she watched 20 inmates browse the modest collection. Most clustered around legal materials or flipped through worn paperbacks. Wilson sat alone, absorbed in what appeared to be a textbook. Business ethics, he said without looking up when her patrol brought her near. Ironic choice, I know. Renee maintained professional distance. I completed my MBA before. He gestured vaguely at their surroundings. Old habits of observation die hard. She should have moved on. The conversation was already longer than protocol recommended. Business ethics didn't take, I guess. A slight smile touched his lips. On the contrary, I understood the ethics perfectly. I simply chose to ignore them. His gaze held hers a moment too long. A decision I regret daily. A disturbance among other inmates interrupted their exchange. As the library period ended, Wilson paused at the return cart, placing his book carefully on top with a small paper bookmark between pages. You might find this interesting, officer, he said quietly. It helped me survive my first year inside. After the inmates were gone, curiosity compelled her to check a worn copy of Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. The bookmark had a single sentence in elegant handwriting. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies our freedom. That night, Renee found herself at the public library, checking out Frankl's book. She told herself it was professional research, but the highlighted passages about finding meaning in suffering resonated with something dormant since her divorce. In the next staff meeting, Dr. Rachel Nguyen presented the education programs available to inmates. Renee, typically quiet, asked questions about the business skills class. We're short-staffed for supervision in that program, Dr. Nguyen mentioned afterward. Would you be interested? 3 days later, Renee volunteered. Unsurprisingly, Darius Wilson was among the 12 inmates enrolled. Throughout the session, her eyes returned to him more often than she acknowledged. Unlike others who struggled with the material, he worked with focused intensity, occasionally helping nearby inmates understand concepts. That evening, Renee started a journal, a leather-bound notebook gifted years ago by her mother. She wrote about prison dynamics and, against better judgment, her impressions of inmate Wilson. His hands don't look like they belong in a prison. Long fingers, clean nails. He holds a pencil like someone who expects his words to matter. What makes a man with his education choose to throw everything away? Over weeks, Renee volunteered for additional library shifts, telling herself it was the quietest duty. During one shift, Wilson approached her desk. "Officer Jackson, I wonder if you might help me locate something by Camus." "Philosophy section, third shelf," she replied without looking up. He paused. "Did you read it?" "Frankel's book." The question caught her off guard. She shouldn't engage. "I did. And it was thought-provoking." The smile he gave seemed genuinely pleased. "That's all any author can hope for." Dr. Nguyen approached Renee in the staff lunchroom days later. "You've been picking up extra library shifts," she observed. "I've noticed changes recently. The hair, the subtle makeup." Renee instinctively touched her hair, now worn down instead of in its usual severe bun. "Just trying something different." Nguyen nodded thoughtfully. "In this environment, well, I'm here if you ever want to talk." That afternoon, Warden Davis called Renee to his office. "Your performance has been exemplary," he began. "I'm considering assigning you as the primary security officer for all business skills sessions. Given your background in finance before corrections, you understand the material." "I'm honored by your confidence, sir," Renee replied, an unexpected thrill running through her. That night, she wrote in her journal again. "I know it's wrong to find him interesting. He's an inmate, a criminal. But when he speaks, when he looks at me as though he really sees me, not just another uniform, I remember what it feels like to be truly noticed. This is dangerous thinking. I need to be more careful." The next day, as inmates filed into the expanded business class, Wilson hung back slightly. "Officer Jackson," he said quietly, "I heard you'll be with us for all sessions now. I look forward to having someone who appreciates the value of what we're learning." Throughout the class, her attention repeatedly drawn to his focused expression, to his intelligent questions. When their eyes met briefly across the room, the jolt of connection told her that despite all her professionalism and experience, a boundary had been crossed that would prove impossible to restore. Spring arrived at Westlake Correctional with weak sunshine that barely warmed the exercise yard. Renee had been assigned to the business skills program for 6 weeks, her days increasingly structured around Darius Wilson, who sat in the third row, attention divided between the instructor and her. The first note appeared in late March, tucked inside a returned textbook. "You understand Frankel better than most. Not many see beyond the survival story to the deeper meaning." Renee should have reported it. Instead, she slipped it into her pocket, heart racing. Officer Howard noticed Renee checking the book cart with unusual care. "Finding anything interesting in the literature, Jackson?" His tone was casual, eyes watchful. "Just making sure nothing inappropriate is being passed," she answered, fingers pressed against the hidden note. That night, she burned the note in her kitchen sink, watching it blacken. But she couldn't burn the knowledge she'd crossed another line, couldn't erase the thrill at seeing his handwriting. During the next class, she left a book on his desk, Breen Brown's work on vulnerability. No note needed. His small nod sent a wave of satisfaction she refused to examine. The prison library became their sanctuary. She volunteered for every possible shift, began checking out books herself, leaving small marks, a folded corner, a dot beside passages, that he would find when checking out the same book. They developed a language without words, a communion of ideas more intimate than physical touch. In late April, during a quiet library shift, Darius spoke more freely. "My father left when I was 7, he said, shelving a book. "Walked out on my mother's birthday. Never called, never sent support. She worked 3 jobs. Died 2 years before He didn't finish. I promised myself I'd never be without money, without control," he continued. "Funny how that turned out." Something in his vulnerability cracked Renee's reserve. My ex-husband left 2 years ago. For his administrative assistant. Told me I'd become boring. Predictable. Their eyes met. Understanding flowed between them. The pain of abandonment, of being deemed insufficient. The next day, Dr. Nguyen caught Renee leaving the bathroom with freshly applied lipstick. You've been looking more alive lately. It suits you. Renee felt transparent. Just trying to take better care of myself. Though you've been exclusively volunteering for education supervision, Nguyen noted. Might be good to maintain variety. 2 days later, Renee overheard the nurse discussing medication with Dr. Patel outside exam room 3. Wilson's viral load is stable, but we should monitor his T-cell count. The stress of transfer sometimes affects adherence. Has he had issues taking his meds? Dr. Patel asked. No, very consistent. His HIV is well controlled. Renee froze. HIV. Darius had HIV. The knowledge should have been a stark reminder of boundaries that existed beyond professional ethics. That evening, she researched HIV management, transmission risks, treatment efficacy. Modern antiretroviral therapy. Undetectable equals untransmittable. During their next encounter, when momentarily alone, she spoke just above a whisper. I was in the medical wing Tuesday. His body stilled. I see. Were you going to tell me? When it became necessary. And when would that be? When there was something at risk. With proper treatment, it can't be transmitted. I've been undetectable for years. She should have walked away. Instead, she asked, how did it happen? Before prison. I was careless after my business collapsed. I'm not careless anymore. About anything. Their first touch happened the following week, fingers brushing as he handed her a book request. The contact lasted seconds but felt like electricity. His eyes darkened, her breath caught. In May, Renee began falsifying logs, creating 15-minute gaps. The first kiss happened in the AV room, quick and desperate. By the third, she had memorized the blind spots in security camera coverage. Howard noticed the discrepancies but only commented about accurate record-keeping. Seen good officers go down for sloppy paperwork. The supply closet became their frequent meeting place, 8 minutes between shift changes when the hallway was clear. This is insanity, she whispered against his neck. No, he murmured. This is the only sane thing here. The only real thing. She began smuggling small items, better soap, premium foods, eventually a cheap phone sealed in waterproof packaging. Each transgression made the next easier. Her personal life faded. Her son complained she was distracted. Bills piled up unopened. She existed for moments in Darius's presence, for his plans after release. I have investments they never found, he told her. Enough to start over somewhere new. Together. Renee believed him. Needed to believe. The alternative, risking everything for an illusion, was unthinkable. She started a second journal hidden inside a hollowed textbook, recording not just feelings but plans. A small coastal house, her son adjusting, Darius building a consulting business. Howard caught her exiting the supply closet, smoothing her uniform. Jackson, whatever you're doing, be careful. I've seen what happens when lines blur. Not everyone in here is who they pretend. Renee maintained denial. Just inventory check. Your schedule's unusual lately. Logs don't always add up. I'll be more careful, she replied, understanding the double meaning. That night, looking in her mirror, Renee barely recognized herself. Bright eyes, secret smile, sense of living that had been absent for years. She knew she was risking everything, but the risk seemed distant compared to the vibrant reality of feeling alive again. July at Westlake Correctional brought suffocating heat. The air conditioning struggled against 90-degree days, leaving corridors sweaty and tempers short. Renee had been carrying on her affair with Darius for nearly 3 months, her caution eroding as routine success bred confidence. The phone she'd smuggled was their lifeline. Text messages exchanged when she was home and he was alone in his cell. She'd established a careful charging routine, bringing battery packs hidden in resource materials for the business program. During a standard cell inspection, Renee found it. A second phone, thinner and newer than the one she'd provided, expertly hidden in Darius's mattress. Her blood ran cold as she pulled it out, checking that no one was watching. Password protected. She slipped it into her pocket and finished the inspection without noting any contraband. That night, after her son had gone to sleep, she tried common combinations on the phone. Darius's inmate number, his birthday, combinations she knew. On the fifth attempt, it unlocked. What she found shattered her carefully constructed reality. Text conversations with Officer Torres from B Block. Intimate exchanges with Dr. Levine, the physical therapist. Both women sending messages that mirrored her own. Declarations of devotion, promises of help, plans for a future together. Torres smuggling commissary items. Levine bringing painkillers and sedatives with street value. In one exchange with Torres, Darius had written, "Jackson's the most useful. Finance background means she understands the long game. Plus she's desperate for connection. Easiest mark in the place." The next day, Renee maintained her professional demeanor through morning count and class periods. Inside, something had crystallized, a cold clarity like ice in her veins. She waited until business skills class ended, then requested Officer Howard cover her post. "I need to speak with Wilson about his project files," she said, voice remarkably steady. In the storage room adjacent to the classroom, she confronted him, second phone gripped in her hand. "Explain this." Darius's expression shifted. Surprise, calculation, then strange relaxation, as if relieved to stop pretending. "You weren't supposed to find that." "Torres and Levine? How many others?" He leaned against the wall, suddenly a different man. Posture looser, smile sharper, eyes colder. "You think you're special? I've got 3 of you bringing me things, writing love letters, dreaming about our future." He chuckled. "Though you're definitely the most useful." The floor seemed to tilt beneath Renee. "You manipulated me from the beginning." "Of course I did. I watched you for months before speaking to you." His voice was casual, almost bored. "Saw how you looked during family visits, how you touched where your wedding band used to be, how you flinched when younger officers talked about their social lives. Classic signs of isolation, need for validation." He stepped closer. "You practically had exploit me written across your forehead. The books, the conversations. Google is amazing for finding meaningful quotes, for learning just enough about literature to seem intellectual." His smile widened. "Though I'll give you credit, you were a more interesting project than most. Your desperation had depth." Renee felt something break inside her chest. "And the HIV? Is that even real?" "Oh, that's real. Though I may have exaggerated how well I stick to my medication regimen." His eyes were flat, reptilian. "Doctors are so insistent about daily adherence, but some days I just don't feel like it. Makes the side effects more manageable." The implications hit her like a physical blow. "You told me you were undetectable. And you believed me because you needed to." He glanced at his watch. "Unless you're planning to report yourself along with me, I suggest you give me back my phone and we come to an understanding about how this continues." Renee backed toward the door. "There is nothing to continue." His expression hardened. "Think carefully, Renee. I have texts, journal entries you wrote, Officer Torres as backup to verify you were the mastermind bringing contraband. Who do you think they'll believe?" She left without answering, the phone still clutched in her hand. That night, the headache began, a throbbing that painkillers couldn't touch. By morning, she had developed fever, her joints aching. The symptoms matched early HIV infection descriptions she'd read: fever, fatigue, headache, swollen lymph nodes. Terror gripped her as she requested emergency leave. At a clinic across town, Renee gave a false name, paid cash, and requested a full STD panel including HIV. "When was your potential exposure?" the doctor asked. "Ongoing for 3 months," Renee whispered, shame burning through her fever. "And this person's status?" "HIV-positive," supposedly on medication and undetectable. Supposedly. I've learned they sometimes skip doses. The doctor recommended immediate post-exposure prophylaxis. 3 days of sick leave passed in a haze of fever and medication side effects. On the 4th day, Dr. Nguyen appeared at her apartment door. Howard mentioned you seemed upset before your leave. When you didn't answer calls, the warden asked me to check on you. Nguyen noticed the HIV medication bottles on the counter but said nothing, simply putting on kettle for tea. They sat in silence until Nguyen finally spoke. Wilson. It wasn't a question. Renee nodded, tears finally breaking through. He told me I was special, she whispered. That I understood him. But there were others, Torres, Levine. He was manipulating all of us. And he lied about his medication. He put me at risk knowingly. Nguyen's expression remained professional, but softened. This happens more than the administration acknowledges. Inmates with nothing but time, studying staff for vulnerabilities. I could be infected. The PEP regimen is very effective if started early. Renee looked up sharply. You know these medications. I've counseled staff in similar situations before, though few get in quite so deep. The realization that she was a statistic, a predictable scenario, broke something in Renee. A harsh laugh escaped her, spiraling into uncontrollable sobs. When Renee suddenly smashed her mug against the counter, slicing her palm on the ceramic shards, Nguyen moved quickly to restrain her. At the emergency room, Nguyen used her credentials to speak with the attending physician, ensuring Renee would be placed on 72-hour watch. I can't go back there, Renee said flatly. I can't see him. You need time, Nguyen agreed. But right now, we need to make sure you're safe. In the psychiatric holding room, Renee stared at the ceiling, shock crystallizing into something new, a cold, focused rage. The humiliation of being deceived, the health risk he knowingly subjected her to, the calculated exploitation of her vulnerabilities, it all coalesced into singular clarity. Darius had made one critical error in calculating her weaknesses. He assumed her pain would lead to self-destruction or resignation. He hadn't considered that for some, betrayal transforms grief into something more dangerous, a methodical determination to return suffering in kind. By the time she was released 3 days later, Renee's fever had broken, both from medication and from the burning clarity of purpose that now drove her. She knew exactly what she needed to do. August heat shimmered over Westlake Correctional as Renee returned to work. Her appearance had changed, hair pulled back severely, makeup gone, eyes flat and unreadable. Dr. Nguyen had cleared her return with recommendations for counseling, unaware of the cold calculation that had replaced Renee's emotional chaos. During her leave, Renee had studied HIV treatment protocols meticulously. She'd researched medication appearance, side effects, and consequences of interrupted treatment. Her background in finance made her methodical. Her betrayal made her dangerous. She requested transfer to medical administrative duties, citing trauma and need for reduced inmate contact. Warden Davis approved it, relieved to have her away from direct supervision. This position gave her access to medication records and the pharmacy storage area. The medication dispensary operated with surprising vulnerability. Nurse Jenkins, overworked and understaffed, accepted Renee's help with administrative filing during medication distribution. Within 2 weeks, Renee had identified Darius's treatment pattern: 3 antiretroviral medications dispensed weekly. Her first move was subtle. She modified computer records to show Darius had received exemption to keep medication in cell due to exemplary compliance, a change requiring only mimicking Nurse Jenkins' login. The medications still appeared distributed in logs, but without direct observation. During inventory duties, Renee replaced Darius's actual HIV medications with nearly identical calcium and vitamin D tablets she'd purchased and repackaged. She pocketed the real medications, later flushing them down a gas station toilet miles from the prison. 3 weeks passed. Renee maintained her efficient demeanor, performing duties with quiet competence. In the staff lunchroom, she overheard Officer Torres being questioned about contraband. Someone had submitted an anonymous tip about smuggled cell phones. Renee ate silently, not a flicker of expression crossing her face. In mid-September, Darius reported to medical with persistent cough and fever. Blood work revealed plummeting CD4 count and skyrocketing viral load, signs of treatment failure. Confused medical staff ordered medication review while Darius was placed on observation. "It doesn't make sense," Nurse Jenkins told the prison physician. "His medication compliance is perfect. The drugs are being dispensed." "Could he be hoarding and discarding them?" the doctor asked. "Not with direct observation," Jenkins replied, unaware of the exemption record Renee had created. Renee's final move was an anonymous letter to the warden, Prison Oversight Board, and State Corrections Department. It detailed inappropriate relationships between inmates and staff, specifically naming Wilson, Torres, and Levine. It included just enough information to trigger investigation, while omitting her own involvement. Within days, Westlake Correctional was in lockdown. Internal affairs arrived, cell phones were discovered, and Officer Torres implicated Dr. Levine in contraband smuggling. Renee watched with detached interest, her face a mask of shocked concern. Meanwhile, Darius's condition deteriorated rapidly. Pneumocystis pneumonia, common in untreated HIV, had infected his lungs. He was transferred to the prison medical ward, then to county hospital when his oxygen levels dropped dangerously. Detective Sarah Powell of State Police Corrections Investigation arrived in October. Unlike internal affairs officers, Powell was thorough and suspicious of easy answers. She combed through staff schedules, inmate movements, and medication logs with relentless precision. "Officer Jackson," Powell said during their interview, "you requested transfer to medical administration around when this situation began. Interesting timing." "I needed a change after my leave," Renee replied evenly. Less inmate contact was recommended. The detective's investigation expanded as Darius's health crisis prioritized the medication tampering. Forensic pharmacy experts discovered the in-cell exemption documentation with suspicious creation dates. Powell requested a second interview, with Dr. Nguyen present. "We found these in Wilson's cell," Powell said, placing photocopies of journal pages on the table, Renee's private writings about Darius, and these text messages on a recovered phone. Renee said nothing, face impassive. "What's interesting," Powell continued, "is the timing of Wilson's medication issues, precisely when you gained pharmacy access." She leaned forward. "His medication was replaced with placebos that look identical, something requiring both medical knowledge and access." Still, Renee remained silent. "Your HIV test came back negative," Powell added softly. "I'm guessing you already knew that." The slight widening of Renee's eyes was the only reaction. The story broke the following week: prison scandal, sex, drugs, and potentially deadly revenge. Articles detailed how a correctional officer had been manipulated into a relationship with an HIV-positive inmate, then tampered with his medication after discovering his manipulation. Stories highlighted failures in prison oversight, staff supervision, and medication security. Darius survived, but barely. The pneumonia caused permanent lung damage, and the period without medication allowed his viral load to spike to dangerous levels. He was transferred to a maximum security facility medical wing, his sentence compounded by new charges related to contraband. Renee was arrested and charged with multiple felonies: medication tampering, official misconduct, contraband introduction, and attempted murder. Her son went to live with his father, refusing visits. Her colleagues avoided eye contact during arraignment, where she sat expressionless as the prosecutor detailed her calculated, cold-blooded attempt to cause suffering and potentially death. Prison administration faced its own reckoning. Warden Davis resigned amid accusations of lax oversight. 3 staff members were terminated for failing to report suspicious behavior. The State Corrections Department announced a comprehensive review of medication protocols in all facilities. In county detention awaiting trial, Renee received a letter from the hospital where Darius had been treated. Inside was a single sheet with familiar handwriting. "Even now, you're still the most interesting one. We're not so different after all." She burned the letter in her cell's metal toilet, watching the paper blacken, just as she had done with his first note months before. Only this time, her eyes held no emotion at all. The county courthouse stood imposing against the November sky. Renee Jackson sat at the defense table in a gray suit that hung loosely on her frame. The civilian clothes felt strange after months in detention center orange. Media representatives and spectators filled the gallery, drawn by sensational headlines. Prosecutor Martin Reynolds arranged his notes methodically. Renee's public defender, Elaine Morales, whispered last-minute advice that Renee barely acknowledged, her eyes fixed on the empty witness stand. The prosecution's case unfolded over 3 days. Detective Powell detailed the evidence trail. Forensic experts explained the medication log alterations. Prison staff described behavioral changes they'd observed but failed to report. On the 4th day, courtroom screens flickered with a video feed from the prison medical ward. Darius Wilson appeared, propped in a hospital bed, oxygen tubes in his nostrils. His once confident posture had collapsed, cheeks hollow, eyes sunken. His previously smooth voice now rasped through the speakers. "Officer Jackson and I became involved in April," he stated, pausing frequently for breath. "She smuggled contraband. When she discovered my other relationships, she threatened retaliation." "Did you believe she would follow through?" Reynolds asked. "Not like this," Darius whispered. "Not by making me suffer." Under cross-examination, Morales highlighted his manipulation. "You deliberately targeted Officer Jackson based on perceived vulnerabilities." "We selected each other," he replied, a ghost of his smile appearing. "She wasn't forced." Dr. Meyer, HIV specialist, testified next. "The replacement of antiretrovirals with placebos created a catastrophic situation. Mr. Wilson's viral load increased exponentially. The pneumonia has caused permanent lung scarring. His life expectancy is significantly reduced. Could this medication interference have resulted in death?" Reynolds asked. "Without intervention, certainly," Meyer confirmed. "Even with treatment, we nearly lost him twice." The prosecution rested with pharmacy records showing Renee's access card entering the medication storage area 7 times during the critical period. Morales built the defense around psychological manipulation and temporary insanity. Dr. Winters, a forensic psychologist, testified about correctional setting power dynamics. Isolation, professional stress, and targeted manipulation created a perfect storm in Ms. Jackson's psyche, Winters explained. When coupled with believing she'd contracted HIV due to his deception, her mental state deteriorated dramatically. Renee took the stand, her voice emotionless as she recounted the relationship and her discovery of his manipulation. "I believed I was special," she said, staring at her hands. "When I found evidence of his other relationships and learned he'd lied about his medication, something broke inside me. I can't explain my actions after that. It was like watching someone else." During recess, Morales approached Renee. "Your son still refuses to attend, but he sent this." The folded paper contained 3 words, "Why did you?" Renee refolded it silently. In closing arguments, Reynolds painted Renee as calculating and vindictive. Ms. Jackson didn't act in passion. She methodically planned revenge, falsifying records, replacing medications, covering tracks. This wasn't temporary insanity, it was attempted murder. Morales countered with a portrait of a woman systematically dismantled. Mr. Wilson spent months studying her, exploiting her loneliness. When she discovered his betrayal and feared for her health, she experienced a psychological break. The jury found her guilty on all counts, with a recommendation for leniency. Judge Hamilton studied Renee before pronouncing sentence. "Your position carried a sacred trust that you violated. While I acknowledge the manipulation you experienced, your response demonstrated disturbing capacity for calculated harm. 7 years, with eligibility for parole after 4. Renee's expression never changed as she was led away. 1 year later, Renee sat in the counseling room of Lakeside Women's Correctional Facility wearing standard inmate clothing. The irony of her residence, just 30 miles from where she'd once worn a guard's uniform, was lost on no one. Dr. Nguyen sat across from her, case file open. Their quarterly sessions were required by sentencing terms. You've maintained a clean record, Nguyen noted. The library supervisor says you're efficient, quiet. Renee nodded slightly. Your son has responded to your last 2 letters. That's progress. Another nod. Are you sleeping better? The nightmares have decreased, Renee acknowledged. The medication helps. Nguyen closed the file. The warden says you've declined the mentoring program despite your skills. Why? I'm not in a position to guide anyone, Renee replied simply. As Nguyen departed, a young female officer appeared to escort Renee back. I'll take her, Dr. Nguyen, Officer Daniels said with a bright smile. Walking the corridor, Renee observed the officer's body language, the attention to appearance, the overly friendly demeanor with certain inmates. At B block entrance, Daniels paused. That Dr. Nguyen seems nice. You have history from Westlake, right? Yes, Renee answered neutrally. I've got an inmate, Marcus Williams, says he knew you from there. Smart guy, always reading. Said you might remember him from the business program. Renee's steps faltered imperceptibly. She recognized the signs, had embodied them herself. The subtle makeup, the personal disclosures, the specific inmate connection. You should be careful about personal connections here, Renee said finally. Daniels looked surprised, then defensive. I maintain professional boundaries. At her cell door, Renee turned to face the young officer. In her eyes flickered a brief battle, the temptation to stay silent against the responsibility to prevent history's repetition. In that moment, she made her choice.